Hey everybody, welcome to the second Write Better Together live webinar talking about perfectionism tonight. So we are happy that you are here joining us and would like to see Emily Brooks and John Myers show their faces. Yay.
Hey, look everybody.
Those are the faces we all love and been waiting for.
These are the faces of perfection. Welcome everybody to Write Better Together. I'm John Myers. Hey, look everybody. It's Emily Brooks. Who's that other person?
Hello everybody, and we have David Corbly with us.
Hey, David.
And he will be answering any of your questions. Keep an eye on the chat. You can use that to ask him questions if you're having trouble getting on or getting your camera set up. We would love anyone jumping on to use their camera and mic if possible. So
what are we talking about on today's webinar/show? But first, let me tell the audience.
Yes.
We're gonna treat these like an actual episode now, with an expanded big idea in the middle. And so instead of "Hey John Myers," it'll be "Hey John Myers and all y'all." It'll instead of "Hey, how did you get out of the bubble, you two?" It'll be "How did everybody get out of their bubble?" And because that we're a community, and you've already been around long enough, or even if you're new to us, that's how the community works. And so we're plugging you into the community. Tag, you're it. So what are we doing today, Emily?
We are going to first, we're going to end up asking everybody, how did you get out of your bubble? Of course.
Yes.
Our big idea is preventing, stopping, eliminating perfectionism in your life. I'm not going to be a perfectionist about the title there. We're going to share the whys of perfectionism, why it's a problem, and how we can overcome it. Then we're going to have an Hey Everyone segment instead of a Hey John Myers segment.
I feel so deluded.
And then we're going to play a silly game that is not scary.
Oh, okay, cool. So I bet you it goes perfectly. Does anyone want to start, or is Emily Brooks going to tell us how she got out of her bubble first? David knows. David wants to tell us how he got out of his bubble.
I wanted people to know, too, that if they respond to a chat in YouTube or Facebook, that it will show up here. So we'll be able to, we'll see all of those as well if you're watching there.
We last time we saw David, he was in the same basement in front of the same curtain. He has not left this bubble for a month. He's still in the same
beard.
He grew a beard.
That's why he couldn't get
Kevin left to a mirror to shave. So do you have a story, David?
Practice. I worked at universities for decades and did lots of presentations, and so it's just the more you do it, the more comfortable you get with it, I think was my secret.
You spoke at, not since in the last month, but since it's come to my attention in the last month, you spoke at a little retreat. And
Branson, Missouri.
Missouri. Tell us about that. It sounded
I was invited to speak to the Ozarks Writers League group. It was probably, 40 people maybe, but just a really, really friendly group and just a nice little cozy atmosphere, and enjoyed that and made some good friends and good connections, and hope to help some of those folks out with some of the things they're trying to accomplish.
What was it, one session or more than one?
Just one session.
And what was it? What was the session?
So since it was near Thanksgiving time, it was kind of themed around recipes. So it's called Your Recipe for Website Success.
Oh, nice.
I like that.
So all the different things you need to do to make it kind of work.
Oh, wow.
I love that. That sounds so fun.
Yeah.
So if I'm not combining two stories, I think I saw a picture of you there. That's how I knew about that. Maybe I'm combining two stories, but it looked like everyone loved you, David.
Oh, well, I hope to not be somebody that they don't love.
That's good.
My aspiration.
That's your aspiration. Be someone that everyone doesn't not love. All right. If Miley Brooks has one, or no, Miley Tucker has one, she can type that in the thing, and then Emily Brooks can tell us how she got out of her bubble.
Yeah. So I honestly haven't gone many places in the past week. Been home a lot, but when we talk about getting out of our bubble, it's like, how are you participating in community? And one of the things that we did that was fun was we had a virtual game night with some friends during the snow. And yes, it brought back some 2020 memories, but it was really fun just to, because for some reason, we only play, it's Jackbox games. We only play Jackbox games when it's like we're virtual, and it's really fun. And so it was good to just like get to see people who otherwise weren't going to be able to just come to our house for various reasons.
Wow. Do you want to tell us what a Jackbox game is? I don't know what that is.
They're games that are on your TV or on your laptop that you can play on your phone. So everybody's looking at a shared screen, but then you also are playing on your phone, and there are things that are kind of like there are like drawing games, there are really humorous games, there are some that are kind of like Balderdash, things like that. There's just a variety of different games, and
I've seen those. I just didn't know they had that genre name.
Yeah. Well, that's the brand that does them. And you can play them virtually, and so it's a really fun way to hang out with friends.
I could see how that would be cool.
Yeah. All right. How did you get out of your bubble?
I went to the mailbox.
Oh my goodness. Your bubble's gonna have to expand eventually, John Myers, from beyond the mailbox. I want you to write an actual story where you go called Beyond the Mailbox. I know you want me to say that's not a story. That's basically what I'm saying.
That's what I'm doing. I'm waiting. I went to the mailbox.
It's not a story, but it could be if you called it Beyond the Mailbox.
So that is not, I was waiting for you to say that's not a story so I could say, yeah, because I actually have a story from Beyond the Mailbox. But I went to the mailbox and I got this thank you card. This is not a story, but I have to block her address, from Lisa with 2 I's, Malima with 2 A's, for our Christmas card that we sent her. So we got a thank you card from our Christmas card, and she's registered to be here. So if she's here and watching this and not signing in, hi Lisa Malima, and thank you for the card. Now, here's my real story. So just moments ago, before we came on here, I went to, I don't want to say the name of the place, in my undisclosed location. I went to a place that has a drive-through and a walk-up window. And the walk-up window, like picture an old-fashioned Dairy Queen, even though that's not what this is. The walk-up window is like, here's the car, here's the people walking up to the window. So if you're in the car in the drive-through, as I was, you're hearing everything that the person at it's the same cashier working both windows, and so you're hearing everything that the walk-up person is saying. So I got to eavesdrop on this person and tell you the story that he was telling. So a homeless man walks up, and yes, I'm 100% sure he's homeless because he told her that he walks up to the window with a big wad of money, and she goes, I'm changed all these names, so don't worry, like you're gonna ever know who Mikey the homeless guy is. And she's like, Mikey, where have you been? I haven't seen you. And he's like, I was in jail. And she's like, hey Charlie, Mikey was in jail, that's where he's been. And he was like the happiest guy. And she's like, what'd you do, Mikey? And he's like, well, I made enough money. Apparently he's a panhandler as well on the corner. And he's like, I made enough money to get a hotel room, so I split a hotel room with another homeless guy, that's how I know he's homeless, that I didn't know. And the police broke down the door and his roommate in the hotel room was wanted and had a gun, and so arrested the other guy. And oh, hey, Mikey, you're here too. We'll arrest you. And he didn't do anything, according to what he's telling the cashier. And so then the cashier turns around, hey, Charlie, Mikey's been in jail. He was innocent, but he spent 3 days in jail till he could get free. He got freed once he finally got in front of a judge. And he's like, I didn't have a gun on me. I didn't do anything. I wasn't there. And they arrested me for aiding and abetting. So aiding and he said, aiding and abetting what? Sitting on a bed in a hotel? Like, he was literally doing nothing with a stranger. So here's the point. Here's the takeaway from that story. She's like, while you were in there in jail, did you see Frankie? And he's like, no, Frankie lives with Eddie now. And she's like, oh, Eddie that used to work here? So Eddie, the homeless guy, used to work at this ice cream establishment. And he goes, yeah. And so he moved out of the camp. There's a homeless camp in the park. So he moved out of the camp. He got his own place. And he goes, if I would have stayed in the camp that night, I wouldn't have been arrested. And now I have this arrest on my record. And so there's two takeaways. One, he was happy with his life. He was glad he was out, but it really didn't bother him that he was in jail for 3 days. He had a big wad of money and he was a regular, so she already knew what his order was. And so he goes there every day and gets a $7 order from this place, and from the money that he makes panhandling. So he's a happy guy, unlike some of the trolls that we have on YouTube that have miserable lives, that have a roof over their head. This guy was homeless and was happy, had a happy life. So that puts things in perspective. And number two, most people would think, oh, he made enough to get a hotel. What a great thing. He didn't have to sleep outside in the cold in the park. And he was like, no, if I would have slept outside in the cold in the park, I wouldn't have been arrested. We don't ever look at the circumstances, which will come up later when we talk about the scenario and the playing field of perfectionism. We don't ever look at the circumstances of, we would consider those negative circumstances of sleeping in the park, but in his situation, it would have been a good thing if he slept in the park.
Wow.
So you weren't expecting that.
Nope. Wasn't
I didn't learn that on the way to the mailbox, did I?
Wow. The whole purpose of this is that we know that as writers, we can tend towards perfectionistic characteristics. Many of us can. And that can be seen as a good thing or a negative thing. And we want to talk about the problems with it and then how we can work towards overcoming it. So why are people perfectionists, John Myers?
So each one of these reasons, there's a reason that they state is the reason. But then I didn't read the whole study, but I read far enough to go,
right,
it's more than that. And so it's not the reason that they state. So reason number one is they have high standards. However, the study further revealed, so this was Frost in 1990, that the reason they have high standards is they've labeled themselves as perfectionists. So they have, by applying the whole study was on the label. And so, or my takeaway from the study was on the label. I shouldn't say it's the whole study, but, and so because they've given themselves that label, now they have a label that they have to live up to. And had they not put that label on themselves, they wouldn't. It really doesn't talk about the underlying cause of the perfectionism. It's, I've deemed myself one, so I have to be one. Reason number two from Sanford and Menzel was they have a fear of failure. And in their minds, in the perfectionist mind, because they have a fear of failure, and this is what I was talking about the playing field, but they create this circumstances in which they think they can't fail, but they never worry about the product. So their perfectionism isn't the end result. It's the circumstances in which they are creating the product or the result or the sales report for their job or whatever the thing is. It's not, hey, this thing has to be perfect. It's the playing field has to be perfect in order for me to not fail. And I acknowledge, not me, but these people, I acknowledge that my fear of failure is my motivational factor. So that's interesting, right? It's not something that holds them down. They look at it as a positive. I have a fear of failure. That's my positive motivating factor. But then they create these circumstances that can never be perfect. And then they were like, hey, my result wasn't perfect. Well, no kidding, because of what you did with the circumstances. And the last one was control. There's a kind of an overlap, and that they feel they can't move forward until they create a perfect environment for whatever the thing is. So they're frozen in environmental and structure creation, and so they don't even make the final thing, because they're trying to do they're trying to make the circumstances perfect. So they're trying to in the case of my homeless guy story, rather than say, oh, there are advantages to living outside in this park, I'm going to go get in this hotel. Well, the hotel was actually worse for the guy. So they try to make their environment perfect, and that is not the solution to their perfectionism as well. So that's why those are the 3 whys that I found.
That's really fascinating. And it kind of correlates. So I did, one of the things I was looking at was from Hewitt and Flett, and he talks about their, a depressed student in college who was like set on like, I have to get an A+, not like I should get an A+, I should do my best, but like I have to get an A+. And that even when he got the A+, he was still depressed because he felt like he ended up having to work harder than he thinks he should have. So like, oh yeah, I got the A+, but it should have been easier. And I think that's kind of similar to what you're talking about with the environment of like his perfectionism. He got the end result, but that didn't matter because of the process that it took to get him there.
Well, so if we're talking about the same study, then yeah, so that does overlap. But my takeaway was that, so he gets the A, but it's like he doesn't have control over that. He has control over the process, but he doesn't have control over the final result. So that's why he struggles with his perfectionism, because the result that he got had nothing to do with the thing that he could control, the environment. That was my takeaway.
Right. And you may feel like, well, sure, I wrote this thing, but I needed help. This person gave me this idea, or this person read through it, and so it's like, well, I didn't do it all myself, and so it's not perfect. I didn't do a perfect job.
Or anybody that presented this would have gotten an A. They also devalue the A. Because that part's out of their control.
This professor grade is an easy grader. Yeah. One of the things too that I thought was interesting from this Hewitt and Flett thing is that a lot of psychologists talk about the difference between maladaptive and adaptive perfectionists, and that adaptive perfectionists are those like athletes who they're high achievers and they get things done. But Hewitt actually argues that no perfectionism is problem free, no version of it, and there's a difference between being a high achiever and having the desire or need to be perfect. So you can be ambitious, you can be kind of a type A personality, you can have all of these different things that you want to achieve and not necessarily have that desire or need to be perfect in all of those. And they're arguing, is it okay if I talk about some of the problems?
Yeah.
They contend that it is a problem because it is correlated. This perfectionistic kind of pathology is a risk factor essentially for depression, anxiety, bipolar, eating disorders, like all these other things. It doesn't mean that because you're a perfectionist that you're going to have those things, because we tend to, I think in society, even have we just say perfectionism generally, and they're talking about, okay, you need this thing. This is a thing that's controlling your life, and it can then lead to those other issues. They also describe 3 different types of perfectionism. Yeah, because the main point of that article that I was reading is that Hewitt and Flett were trying to prove that perfectionism isn't just something that can be like, oh, you can just work on your perfectionism and to achieve things better. They're like, you can achieve things without being a perfectionist and be in a much healthier way, which we'll talk about later. But it does describe 3. This is from a different article. The other one was from the American Psychological Association. This one's from Psychology Today. That describes 3 types. So one is self-oriented perfectionism, which is when you impose an unrealistic desire to be perfect on oneself. So nobody else is making you feel this way. Nobody's telling you have to be perfect. You just take it on. Other-oriented perfectionism means imposing unrealistic standards of perfections on others. So you want other people to be perfect, which is really interesting. And I see that, especially thinking back on, like, I feel like I used to be very perfectionistic, and I would 100%, I would like expect other people to be perfect because I was trying to be perfect. So like, why wouldn't other people,
You also, and I'll spin this in a positive way,
Yeah.
you also consider other people more than I do, right? And so you're aware of other people's responses to things. You're just more other people aware than
Yeah,
what
I
some
can
of
see
us are.
that. Yeah. And the last one is related, but it's when you, it's socially prescribed perfectionism, which is where you perceive unrealistic expectations of perfection from others. So you might think, my parents need me to be perfect, or my teachers need me to be perfect, or my friends need me to be perfect. Like, so you're taking you're taking an impression of other people's expectations on you, even if that's not, even if it doesn't exist. I think, I mean, it would say that all of those are unhealthy in their own ways. When it comes to writing, what I'm curious about is, how do we do all 3 of those?
David.
Because I think we do. I think people do, right?
Well, we heard it from the 300 people that we talked to at Southern Festival of Books. We heard this thread of perfectionism coming. I think that's where the gem of this
Yeah.
of this episode came from, because we wrote it down. I scribbled it down on our little money sheet when we were collecting money, and because we kept hearing it over and over.
Yeah. And I think, well, I want to ask, to those listening, just as we're talking, I want to know, like, where do you think your perfectionism comes from? What do you feel like? It's more like you put it on yourself? Do you put it on others? Do you feel like other people are putting it on you? And how does that show up in your writing? I would think I'm definitely, if I were to like claim one, I guess you don't have to claim one, but I relate the most to self-oriented perfectionism because I don't feel like anybody ever put that on me. Like, I don't feel like my parents put that on me, but it's more of like the need to be perfect just for myself. And I do think I've grown a lot from it, by the way. It used to be a lot more, I guess, debilitating than it is now. I don't really stress about it as much as I used to, but it can be really crippling. And I think some of the ways that it can manifest and why it becomes attached to anxiety and depression is because you're constantly feeling like a failure, even if you're not. You're worried about being a failure. You are maybe even taking on tasks that you don't actually have any desire to do just to appear successful. And so I think all of those for sure can cause, stress in your life unnecessarily.
David.
I am definitely a perfectionist. I remember my my first semester of college, right out of high school, I took the basic English lit and loved reading all the great works. And then we had to turn in, it was a summer school class, we had to turn in an essay almost every day, like a 1-page essay, and I just wouldn't do it because it was not perfect. And so my wonderful graduate assistant teacher flunked me that semester for not turning anything in. But it was a good lesson, that you got to do it. You got to turn it in. And I mean, she was kind. She spoke to me about it. And I said, I can't. It's not Steinbeck quality. It's not Hemingway quality. And so sometimes we have to learn those lessons the hard way. It took forever to get that grade point up. But
did you not write it, or you wrote it and then didn't turn it in?
I didn't turn it in.
Oh, so you actually did the work.
Yeah.
Were you worried about the professor's opinion of it, or just your own? You had just your own standards.
It's like you as my standard, and reading great works. I found I have less time these days to read the great works, and so I'm more able to churn stuff out because I'm not comparing myself as much. But
I don't have this thing, so I don't. Anyone that received the email I sent an hour and a half ago knows it's full of mistakes, and but I had to get sent, and so I didn't obsess over it or anything. I'm like, I can fix the mistakes or I can hit send, and so I hit send.
I do think, and we'll talk more about techniques later, but having deadlines is a big. You just kind of well, I have to turn it in, no matter whether it's good or not.
Nothing focuses the mind like your impending death, right?
Yeah. Oh, we got a response.
Yes. Hi, Emily.
Will you read that for us?
Yes. Emily says, I think I have very high standards, but only things that are important to me. Cleaning the house? No. Cooking and writing? Yes. Good priorities.
That makes a lot of sense. I relate to that as well.
So cooking and writing. Can you relate to that as well, Emily?
A little bit. If you're talking specifically about cooking, because my husband will be I'll be giving him something and I'll be like, it's not very good this time, and he's like, I'll be the judge of that. Let me just eat it and I'll enjoy it or not enjoy it, and it's okay, But I'm always I have to give a preview of I messed up on this and I messed up on this. Speaking of my husband, he can be very meticulous. I don't know if perfectionist is the right word because it's not like it gives him anxiety, but he has high standards for certain things that I don't. For instance, the way he folds sheets, immaculate. Whereas I'm okay with them kind of looking like a bundle.
The way he folds or rolls up extension cords?
Yeah, stuff like that. But again, it's not a stress thing for him. It's just this is how he does it.
And this this is a positive thing. I saw the extension cord thing. This is the right way. Not this is how I do it. This there's one right way to roll these extension cords, and this is it. And there's order in the world if they're rolled this way.
Right.
I can see that.
And again, to distinguish these, you can be excellent. You can excel at things and it not cause anxiety and stress and depression in your life because you are learning and growing and you're doing the best that you can, but it's not the perfectionism isn't stopping you or making you anxious or unhappy.
Emily in the chat mentioned, that our characters can have perfectionist standards, quirky standards. So that's kind of a different way to look at it too. Not just us, but our characters.
Yeah, I love that.
Loves your folding sheets example. She has very short arms, so it's very frustrating. I have very long arms, and it's very frustrating. So, and I can handle the bundle just fine, especially the fitted sheet. I'm done.
I've given up.
How would he fold sheets with all these arms?
Oh my goodness.
Yeah, with fitted sheets, it's I've tried doing it the way he does it, and I will watch him and I'll try it, and I can't. I don't know what I can't do it. I'm sure that I could with enough practice, but
it's not important.
Do I care enough? Not really.
Yeah.
Interesting.
So, John Myers, have you ever struggled with perfectionism, or are you just going to pretend like that, or are you just going to say no? This isn't.
pretend.
I corrected myself.
So no, because
That's what I thought you were gonna say.
because when we get to the solutions, the good enough one, like I'm not gonna turn in a piece of garbage, but I'll turn in a B paper because it's good enough. It doesn't have to be an A paper. I won't turn in a C paper. I'm a busy man.
Yeah, I think that's great. Like,
I think if I was gonna fall victim to, there will also be, if there were more people here, there'd be someone in the group would be defending perfectionism. There would be.
Yeah.
And because like an editor's going to say, no, I don't want to go through all of these 100 pieces of garbage. Da, 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 da. Come on, at least have some standards before I have to weed through all these. And so I could hear that argument. I think if I were to fall victim of it, I would. I don't know. I think there's a reason why I don't fall victim to it. I would say the one thing that could cause it is if the circumstances, controlling the circumstances, that one, like if they were so bad, then I might get frozen, right? Well, like, so we had microphone problems last week, right? And so I spent 3 days just trying to figure out and relentlessly chasing down this one problem. So I for all intents and purposes wasted 3 days. But was that because I was a perfectionism, or if I would have found a workaround, I would have used the workaround. And on the day, if I weren't talking about it right now, no one would even know because we used the phone that day, and that workaround worked just fine. So
yeah, and I think that there are, like, when you're doing a project, there are processes that you have to go through to complete something. Like when you're writing, you don't just skip the revision process because you don't care if it's perfect, right? There's a process of revision that a lot of authors go through multiple times. It's not because they're like anxiously, nervously like, oh, this isn't good enough. It's because it's a process. Like, that's just part of the process, is that you make it as good as it can be. I think it's more about your mindset than the actual manifestation of it, if that makes sense. Like, how are you going about these processes? And is it giving you anxiety, or is it making you freeze up or feel like you can't finish something? Does that make sense?
Yeah, totally. So when you were saying that, it was putting me in the mind of what the Lucy V. Hay thing, the thing that you had with therapy, what's the worst that could happen? And then Miley just typed in something about, here, read what Miley said. That kind of fits with what you were saying while you were saying it.
Yeah, so we can't be perfect in everything, so I chose the things to strive to make perfect, but I have to become less stressed about it. Failure has taught me that I can survive and not be perfect. It is hard, but I can do it. We need to forgive ourselves for not being perfect.
That just seems like part of what's the worst that could happen.
Mm-hmm.
Like, I don't look at that as failure. Like, she's calling it failure. I don't even call it failure. I'm just like, it just wasn't what you expect. It's lower. I don't even call it lowered expectations. I guess the boundaries thing about not having expectations comes into play there, because if you're not expecting a certain thing, the result you get is fine. It doesn't mean it's not perfect or a failure.
Yeah, I just have all kinds of thoughts that swarmed in my mind as you were talking. And as I was reading her response, that I realized, so I'm a very guilt-driven person, and I'm like, I will beat myself up over things, but I actually will beat myself up over failure more than when I'm in the process of something. It's like, oh, I messed up, I'm an awful person. As opposed to worrying about messing up, if that makes sense. Like, I don't worry about messing up, but when I do mess up, I beat myself up over it.
Do you you don't have to answer this, but you don't ever have to answer anything, but do you fail, or do you just give up? Are there things you failed at or you gave up?
I would say there are things that I think that's a good distinction, and I'm mostly talking about when I mess up in like relationships or in like, oh, I broke this like plate, or I said something stupid, or I messed up dinner when I had guests over. But to answer your question, there are definitely things that like I've submitted this short story however so many times and I eventually gave up. So you could say that's not really a failure. It's a failure to continue to complete something.
And breaking the plate isn't a failure unless you were trying to glue the plate back together and then you broke it. But just holding a plate and then it breaks, that's not a failure.
Yeah. Yeah, I guess I'm just thinking about things that make me feel bad.
Okay.
But it reminds me though, we want to move into techniques, or do you have more?
No, we can move in techniques, but now Miley says she burnt the toaster. I'm watching you out of one eye and watching her scroll on the other eye. Well, that is a failure if you burn the toast. Like you should be. You should never make toast again. You should just give up, right? Isn't that what the point of this webinar? No. You want to correct me, Emily?
I think when she said that failure has taught me that I can survive not being perfect is like the perfect example of letting failure teach you to keep trying and to say like, okay, I burnt the toast, but that doesn't mean I'm going to burn it next time, you know? Or I think about when I was an early writer, like in my tweens, and I kept rewriting the same book. And we've talked about this on the podcast that can be definitely hi, Betsy.
Hey, Betsy.
Cool.
That can definitely be a problem with perfectionists is just rewriting the same thing over and over again because you never feel like it's perfect. But because I was a new writer, that was me discovering, like that was me growing as a writer and learning, oh, I didn't do such a good job with that. I can do better. That's different. And I was enjoying the process. I think that's different from rewriting it because, you know, you really have done your best, but you never feel like it's good enough.
So I know one Betsey Kulakowski. Is that who that is?
I think
if that is, here's my rabbit hole I'm going down. If that is, and David mentioned earlier about having the time zones messed up, she's in the same central time zone, and it's 5 minutes till. Like, did I mess something up? Am I not perfect?
Betsy just moved to Arkansas, so maybe she thought it was a different time zone. I don't know.
Okay, all right.
Oh.
If that's you, Betsy, chime in and tell John Myers he's not perfect.
But Betsy also deals with paranormal and all sorts of time shift things.
We can blame
well, that's what I thought you were gonna say. I thought you were gonna be like, you all experience a time lapse of some kind.
Yeah. We knew. We can blame the Loch Ness Monster. All right. Go ahead and move to the next section, Emily.
Betsy just found us.
Well, welcome. So yeah, I want to talk about some of the techniques. I think since we're on the topic of failure, I think allowing yourself to, you know, like when you're in school, if you're a perfectionist, for instance, like the scenario that David was just talking about, that eventually you learn like, okay, I just need to submit the thing. And that can be really, really hard. But the more you do it and the more you realize that the world doesn't end, kind of like what Miley was saying is you go, okay, it's okay. I don't have to over stress about this. Like when I got a B in college, I wasn't very happy about it, but I was also like, okay, now I've gotten the B and I know it's okay. Like my life didn't end, you know?
Did you get a B in grad school?
I think I got one B, yeah.
I got one too.
Yeah. I'll tell you which one it was later and why. I misread the assignment, I think. The other thing is, well, actually, John Myers, you jump in, and then I've got some strategies in a document that I actually think I'm gonna copy and paste and like share with people because I think it's so good.
These are 3 ways, 2.5 ways that don't let perfect be the enemy of good. So I hinted at that earlier, that the B was good enough, right? And you, I don't even remember how many grades we had in grad school. What do you have? How many do we have? 32 grades?
I have no idea.
Yeah. Well, let's say 30 for the sake of this conversation. Like, as long as you didn't have half B's and half A's, it was fine, right? One big whoop, you know. I mean,
Yeah.
it wasn't a big deal. And so I didn't bother you, Emily, with this, but I bothered Dr. Hunley, Adrian, and Miley with this. I had 2 versions of this poem yesterday because I was doing a submission to Rattle yesterday, and this actually gets to one of my points. And I couldn't decide on which one, and Adrian agreed with me. Miley, I don't remember, and then Dr. Hunley said they're both equal. Does that mean they're both equally bad or both equally good? I don't know. But he just said they were both equal. And so it was 21 poems, and that was the only one that I was even hesitant about, and but I knew it was going to be in there, and so so ironically or sadly, David Lynch died today. So if you're watching this on a rebroadcast, and
I know that.
I know.
sorry to break the news to you. And he was 78, and he's a big influence on my screenwriting, even though anything I write doesn't sound anything like David Lynch. But Emily has known me long enough to where I make these connections between anything, and I've learned that making those real connections between from David Lynch, and my students learned that from me via David Lynch, and so he's carried on through my students. But he would say, and actually, when his family posted the notice that he had died, they put this quote in there. He would say, "Focus on the donut and not the hole," and that that describes it perfectly. Focus on what you have. What you have is good enough, and don't focus on what's lacking, and don't focus on the donut, not the hole. So how appropriate to bring that into this conversation, and that's the underlying thing, underlying foundation behind all 3 of these points that I'm going to give you. And if you remember, on a previous episode, we showed David Lynch's checking stick of when to decide, is the project done or not? Is it perfect yet? And to make a long story short, spoiler alert if you haven't watched it, it goes by your instinct, right? It's done when you say it's done, and it's your instinct. His instinct, with or without the checking stick, said that thing wasn't done, and to blow it up and to tear it and start over, that is perfectionism. But the rule of it's your decision, it's your instinct, that isn't perfectionism. So he's an interesting mix of the two. So here are my 3 points that fall underneath that foundation. Number 1, the thing about getting the circumstances right before you continue, or getting frozen in those circumstances, that's never going to happen. You're never going to get the circumstances. And so your piece of writing, and Emily and I have talked about it this week, your piece of writing, the dishes could all be done, right? But all the laundry is never going to get folded. The house is never going to be perfectly clean. And so let's say it's dishes, laundry, yard work, and writing. Just time slot those, and why does the writing have to be the one that doesn't get done? Dinner probably has to get done, right? But the dishes can get done tomorrow. Yeah, but if you're not a germaphobe, but the laundry can get done tomorrow. Like, stuff can get put off. Why does the writing have to get put off? It's just another thing. And so if there's 4 things to do and writing's one of them, make that number 2 or make that number 1. It doesn't have to be the thing that doesn't get done. Point number 2, deadlines are a great motivator. That book that I was talking about yesterday that I was working on. So Rattle's chat book competition ended yesterday. I thought at 5, and I was rushing to get it done at 5, and I thought I would double check, and just at 4:30 I double checked to see if it was at 5 or not, and it was at 11:59, and I was like, oh, would I have hit submit at 4:59? I sure would have. And but now I automatically I had an extra 6 hours, and so David texted me like at 10 o'clock, and I'm like, I got 11:59 deadline, I can't answer you till tomorrow. And but what if I could have finished it at 5 o'clock? Nothing changed other than that one poem that I just told you the example about. Like everything else was the same. And but I waited for Miley and Adrian and Dr. Hunley to respond, and then I went to the store and came back and thought about it. And so the deadline would have dictates when you're done, and so don't let perfect be the enemy of good. And finally, when I asked you, did you do it wrong, or did you just give up? It occurred to me during the burnt toast thing, and I said, quit burning just quit, don't ever make toast again. If I really suck at something, I just won't do it again, right? And so is that because I'm a perfectionist? No. So I'm not good at baseball, right? Or I'm not good at basketball. So I should go do that and go do my best? Like, why? I don't I could. I can go get all beat up in hockey tomorrow on the skating rink. Why would I do that? Because it wouldn't be fun. And so I only do the things I'm good at. And now, do I learn new things? Yeah. So I might learn a new writing thing or a new creative activity or whatever. And but I'm not gonna go learn pickleball because everyone else is learning pickleball, because I don't care. We're like, what? So I might be a B pickleball player. I don't want to do it. So my point number 3 is only do the things you're good at. don't do the things you suck at. So if you burn the toast, stop making toast. Go to Panera and go get a bagel. Okay, respond to that, Emily Brooks.
Oh, that's so good. Yes, I have a few extra techniques to add if you're ready for that. But as you were talking, something that was running through my mind was we make lots of sports analogies. I don't know why. Neither of us understand sports. I'm going to do my best. But I think we somehow think that art is different from a physical training, in that we may, if you were in high school and you are learning, let's say you're doing track, you don't have the expectation that the first run that you can run, let's say 5 miles. No, you build your body up to that over time. And then you can do, the 5K, and then you can do the 10K, and then, all of those things. But we have this feeling, I feel like, that when we start writing, that it has to be perfect that first time, or even after revision, like it has to be, like I have to be pro. And at least from my experience, what I learned is that my writing grew exponentially with each new project, not just rewriting an old project. I love rewriting old projects. I think revising and rewriting is also a wonderful way to become a better writer. In fact, I think it's vital to become a better writer. But I also think that it's important, especially for new writers, to keep starting new projects, because you're going to starting and finishing and revising new projects, because you're going to get better each time. So I also have, did you have a response to that?
I agree. No, I agree. I've never heard you say that before. That's brilliant. And,
Awesome.
I agree 100%.
The rest it comes from the University Health and Counseling and Psychological Services.edu. But they have some really great techniques, and I'm going to just highlight a few of them. And the first one I want to say actually is something that Hewitt and Flett said as well, who we were referring to earlier, that you have to know why you are a perfectionist. Is it because you're trying to people please? Are you looking for affection? Are you looking for admiration? Are you just looking for, your own standards to be met? What is the reason? Because that's going to really help you cope with it. Then you also can do a few things. There's on this page that I'm looking at, they talk about the difference between healthy goal setting and unhealthy or perfectionistic goal setting. So perfectionistic goal setting has these qualities. Your goals are often based on the expectations of others. Your goal is perfection or the best at all times. The focus is on the end result, not the process of working towards the goal. And I know that kind of conflicts a little bit with what you're saying, so take that with a grain of salt. And then disapproval or failure is generalized to self-worth. The one of those that stands out to me a lot is that if you take all of that, it seems like you're not necessarily making goals out of your own desires or because you want to do something, but you're doing it out of like pressure on yourself or pressure from others. The healthy goal setting is based on your wants and desires. What do you actually enjoy? Healthy goals are one step beyond present or previous achievements. So it's only that one step ahead. It's not, like I just said, you don't go on the track and expect to run a 5K. It's what have I done? Where am I at? What's realistic for me to do this time? And then pleasure can be derived from the process of working towards the goal. So we talked about that, like why do something you don't want to do? And then disapproval or failure can be seen as to a specific situation, which by that I think they phrase that weird, but I think what they mean is it's just something that happens and you deal with it as it comes, but it's not like related to your self-worth. It's something that is more related to that exact situation, not to you as a whole. But I think, again, just to give an overview of that, of why I shared that, is it's about doing things that you enjoy, that you want to do, that bring you pleasure, that are realistic, that for you to do now, one step at a time. And then the last thing I want to share is there's a thing called SMART goal setting. So it's an acronym. And it is setting goals that are specific, measurable, achievable, realistic, and timely.
My pastor does those same five.
I love it.
That same thing.
And it's what we talk a lot about on the podcast about journey before destination, about thinking about what you can achieve, like setting realistic goals, not setting goals that are, objectives, as John Myers likes to say, not setting objectives that are reliant on other people or their evaluation of your work, but objectives based on your own effort. So I'm actually probably going to just send that whole list because I know that was a lot. I'll probably send that to everybody just to refer to.
Make them measurable, make it bold, underline, make it red.
Yeah,
I mean, they're all equal, but if it's not measurable, then it gets not because you're comparing yourself to others or do I measure up to others, but if it's not measurable, it gets put off to the end. Like if you make measurable not an important criteria, you don't, it won't get done. Like there has to be some before and after.
And I've noticed this with myself. If I haven't measured it beforehand in a way that I can track, then I may look back and think that I've done nothing. I'll be like, oh, I've barely made any progress on this, when maybe I have, but I haven't been keeping track of it. So I think the measurable also allows you to go, okay, I'm working on this a little bit every day. And then the timely one I think is important too, because we talked about it earlier, which is you have a deadline, and once you hit the deadline, you say it's done, non-negotiable. It's done at that point.
And and like, so what I was gonna say was, like in our book, that's the book. Yeah, but that's how the book got done so fast, was
it is
measurable. And we did give us time targets, right?
Yeah.
But the measurable part is how it got done. Emily got 5 chapters done. I only got 1. Like I gotta write anyway faster. And so,
one of the reasons for perfectionism can be comparison, which we have to be careful of as well.
No, but I mean, as far as pacing,
yeah,
I would never compare you can't even compare our chapters to each other. They're so different.
Again, looking at the goals that are realistic and achievable to you, what is, like right now as a pregnant woman, I've had to set very realistic goals for myself, because like the other day I tried to do a bunch of meal planning and meal prep and cooking, and I got exhausted so fast. I was like, the kitchen's a mess, but I'm going to go lay down. Right.
I can solve that. Just have your baby in 1 week.
Yeah, that's what I should have done. Darn.
If only then. If only you knew that. Since you held up the book, we were looking at it before this thing. I don't know. 2/3 of the chapters deal with perfection.
They really do. And they're very practical too. Like, okay, I can't come up with any ideas. Here's some practical ways that you can come up with some ideas and get started. Things like that. It's really funny how often it came up. We didn't have a chapter on perfectionism. It's like just kind of scattered throughout the book.
Yeah. And in a major way.
Because I think it's something, again, like we said at the very beginning, it's so relatable, even if you're at a, you may be at a very high functioning level of it, and still understand the problems that can come with it.
Betsey and Miley have more to say. Miley wasn't able to, but you can put your face on here if you'd like,
Oh,
just
for
saying.
sure.
And
Betsey,
go ahead.
Betsey's sense of humor when we were talking about doing things that you're not good at, or not doing things you're not good at. Betsey said, hockey is fun, even if you're not good at it. It just hurts more. I love it.
That's true.
I would say that could also be adapted to like, don't do the things that you don't want to do. Like, just if it's not fun, right? There are things.
I go on my stupid walk every day. I hate it. It's stupid.
There are some definitely things that you have to do that are not fun, but I love this quote is always attributed to G.K. Chesterton, but I don't know if it actually is from G.K. Chesterton, but it's anything worth doing is worth doing poorly.
Oh.
And he means that to say that there are some things in life that are just pure enjoyable, and it's okay. Like if you are singing your heart out in church and you cannot sing a note, doesn't mean you shouldn't be singing, or dancing or whatever that is, coloring, drawing.
Parenting.
Yes. Yes.
Oh.
You will mess up, but you got to keep doing it.
Yeah, exactly. But also I agree we just had a conversation with Stephanie Jones, who was talking about how she as a independent press pays other people to do the things that she doesn't want to or isn't good at doing, because it's like, why waste my time learning this skill that I don't really want to learn. I don't really need to learn. I'm not going to be good at it. Let's just have somebody else do it.
That was really smart when she said that too. It was like, we kind of knew, like we've had other people say that to it. Like I'm bad at covers, so I hire out someone to do my covers. Right. But, and Betsey, you can speak to this if you want. And, but the way that Stephanie put it, it was like, oh yeah, well, like,
yeah, you don't have to do it all. You really don't. Even in writing, if you're like, I love writing, but I'm not like super great at grammar. There are definitely ways that you can grow in grammar, but you can also have an editor to help you, just as an example.
You can use Brian Baker.
Yes.
And let him have your headache.
Yeah, exactly. So yes, if you're watching, especially on a later feed, when this is an actual episode, then subscribe to our podcast, please.
Did I cut you off too early?
No, I just realized that I said that in such a needy way.
Beg for it.
Please subscribe to our podcast and write a review.
And
if you want to join us for a future webinar, we announce those things all the time on our podcast, but we also send out newsletters with those reminders. So if you want to subscribe to our newsletter, you can go to writebettertogether.com, and there is a subscription box there.
And the next one is February 20th, and it's on how to stay motivated.
Yes,
because we know that our audience is full of slackers. No, I'm kidding. That need motivation. No, I'm kidding. We all need a motivation, and there are certain techniques. You thought this webinar was chock full of information. I have like 9 points for that one.
I'm excited for that one.
This would be a good session. We should do a speaking session on this.
Well, I want to hear more from people about like their techniques and their,
Yeah. I agree.
Even as we're continuing to talk, if you have any techniques that you use, I would love to hear them. But we have a hey everyone. It's not hey John Myers. It's hey everyone.
Can I leave?
Well, you get to learn something too, and this is going to be this is short and sweet, but I think it's fascinating.
But you have to ask them a question, and they have to answer it like I always do. I threw a monkey wrench in there.
Okay, this is such a leading question. Yeah. But what could be the benefit of forgetting things?
Think of a lot of things I need to forget.
Me too. Do you ever learn information and you just go, yep, I'm not gonna think about that. I'm just gonna intentionally My husband said something the other day that he was reading online, and I was like, that's going into the brain vault. I'm not gonna ever think about that again.
It's not even going in the brain vault. David, Betsey, Miley.
I forget anything dealing with numbers. I can't deal with numbers.
Oh, interesting.
I can remember a number. Like if my husband's like, remember this number because I got to write it down in a minute. I'll remember it for a minute and then it's gone.
Yep. But words I remember.
Interesting. I was one of those people who I could take a test and like remember everything and then it would just be gone after, like, because I didn't actually like internalize it. I just got a visual memory of it and then it was gone.
Miley, Betsey, what do you forget? I'm with
Betsey says numbers. Numbers and I don't compute, she says.
I don't do very well with names.
Names.
Hopefully trauma is what Miley said.
We're laughing at your trauma, Miley.
I actually do. Okay, this is terrible, but I do sometimes, like, if I was almost in a car accident or something, I'll just be like, I don't want to remember that. That was scary.
Supposedly, you will forget giving birth.
Yeah, that's what they say.
What they say, and most
all
of the women in my
endorphins
life
in, and you're like, I'm not thinking
forget
about
and had more. So
exactly.
Will you forget the time you told your baby that the sponge is not food? And you made your baby cry?
Oh my goodness. So there are definitely things we want to forget. But sadly, sometimes there are traumatic events and the things that are very unique that happen to our lives that we're more likely to remember. Like if something has happened once in your life, you're more likely to remember it. But there actually is a benefit to forgetting some things. So this is called functional forgetting.
Oh.
Basically in this article from nature.com, they talk about a study where people were tasked with, I'm not going to explain the whole study, but people were tasked with memorizing something, but they were given all of this other data. And the people who were able to forget all the extra stuff were able to remember the important things better. So their brains actually eliminated what was unnecessary so that they could focus. So even when we're doing sessions like this, you're not going to remember everything that we said. You're not going to remember everybody's names. You may not remember what day we had this or what we looked like or what we were wearing, but hopefully there's something that your brain latches onto as that was important, that was different, something about that is going to change me in some way, and that your brain will latch onto that. And then when it does that, when you learn something, your brain cells actually change as they add that new information. So one of the things that we can do is the more we recall something, the more we'll remember it. So those memories from childhood that you have, most likely you remember them because you recalled them often. your parents told stories to you about it, or you had a video of it or pictures of it. So if there's something from a session like this where you're like, I really want to remember that, try to find ways to recall it by, for instance, writing it down. That's why note taking is so beneficial.
Betsey, so as Emily's talking, when there's two of us, I'll remember the things, like if I'm watching or if I want to bring up something from an old episode from 5 months ago, and I'll remember what she said, but I won't remember what I said. And I'll be like, what was the episode where I said this or whatever? When there's 3 of people on your unfreaking believable podcast, how does that dynamic work? Do you remember yours or the 2 Jens, Betsey and the Jens? It's like Benny and the Jets, Betsey and the Jens. Do you remember them more than your own, or do you remember your own more, or how does that work when there's 3 of you? And David, this is something to keep in mind when you start your podcast in April.
The pressure. It's not perfect yet.
I expected it to be full of numbers. David, by the children by the number. Well, Betsy's laughing. That's not an answer, though. Miley says,
I'm trying to find an answer to Miley's question, because I remember reading something about that and now I can't find it. But she asked, like, why do you remember like traumatic events more? And there was a study on rats that it's like their brain would like respond very emotionally to those events. And they're actually trying to come up with a medication for post-traumatic stress disorder that would basically reframe your brain to not have that emotional response to things anymore. So like you'll still remember it, but you won't be as like strong. And then rapid eye movement therapy, which is something I talked about in another episode, is also something that to take the emotions out of those memories. But I think emotions are important. So it's like, I don't know, I'm not a psychologist, so but those are some things that exist.
In what you just read, is her premise true that most people remember the negative more than the positive, or is that case by case person people?
I feel like I was reading that, and again, this is coming from very basic research and things that I've learned, but I feel like I have learned that you remember negative experiences, especially if they seem to stand out like in unique ways. And I think part of that is our protective, like we want to protect ourselves as humans. And so our brains will latch on to things that are considered dangerous to make us avoid that in the future. But again, that's a very basic and uneducated response.
Betsey has a great response, though. How something gets said, that's how is the determinant of whether it's memorable or not. The way it's delivered, the way the message is delivered.
That's really interesting. Yeah, it makes sense because it's like the essence of it. I love one of my favorite things in John Hughes movies is when a character remembers something that's always wrong. It's like they'll have like a thought bubble come up and they'll have a memory of somebody saying something, but it's like the wrong setting or the wrong clothes or it's like the dialogue isn't the same, but the emotion behind it is the same, of like how they felt when that memory was happening. I don't know if y'all know what I'm talking about. They do it in Home Alone and they do it in Planes, Trains, and Automobiles.
There's a name for that when different characters remember the same event differently. That's some.
Rashomon.
Yeah.
Yeah, there's a movie by Kurosawa that Correct. Is so good called Rashomon about how everybody remembers things differently, and it's excellent.
Do I know the game?
Yeah, you explained it to me, so I would thought you might explain.
In Betsey's world, when she said it's memorable, the amount it's memorable depends on how the message is delivered. Some people, they see the Loch Ness Monster and then they're like, "Oh, I just saw the Loch Ness Monster," and they go all over social media right there and they talk about it right then. And other people, they're like, they block it and then they don't remember it for years later. "Oh, I saw the Loch Ness Monster. That's what that was 10, 20 years ago." And then so I wondered if that was how it was. I wondered what Betsey had to say about that. That's where my brain was.
That's really interesting. It actually makes me think of a friend I have who says she can't remember her childhood very much. And I wonder if it has to do with how reflective a person is. Like if you're very past oriented and you're very reflective of the things in your childhood, are you more likely to remember it than someone who is more forward thinking and doesn't spend a whole lot of time just in silence reflecting or talking to people about those memories or looking back over photos, those kinds of things.
Okay. So you can type the answer in that in the chat, Betsey, while we lay out this game. So do you want me to get the whiteboard or you just want to type it up on the screen?
I'm sorry, I was reading Betsey's thing about Bigfoot.
Betsey, you're so distracting.
Well, you're the one who brought up the Loch Ness Monster. She can bring up
We're trying to play the silly game. We got
wow.
Bigfoot and Loch Ness Monster and John Hughes. I don't know what's going on.
But I'm surprised Betsey hasn't mentioned, just Sasquatch in general.
Yeah.
Goodness.
Okay, I'm sorry. Ask your question again.
Do you want me to write a piece of paper or do you want me to get the whiteboard? Is my question.
Either one.
I'll put them on a piece of paper if I have a Sharpie here.
Okay.
I got a Sharpie. All right. Every person here, you're going to create the perfect story, y'all. All y'all. All three of you. You need a protagonist, a goal, and a flavor of obstacles, like a cluster of obstacles that are related somehow. And like they need to be something that came out of something that's come out of our mouth in the last hour.
Oh.
Like something that we talked about. So this is a recursive exercise where we're using the content the organic content that we just created in the last hour. I know Betsey wasn't here at the beginning. You all are going to build a story out of it. So protagonist, the three of you type a protagonist, or David, you can say yours out loud. The other two of you type in a protagonist.
We're just going to choose one though, right? Or
we're going to see what the three choices we get. I don't want them to conform them to each other, right? So
yeah.
But what if someone says, I don't want to give an example yet because then I've learned from my students, so I'll copy the example I give.
I almost made a joke example and then was like, but that could be the actual thing, so I'm not going to say it.
That's what happened. We know. We know how it is. All right, I hear typing going on. That's either got to be David or Emily because I'm not typing.
Am I supposed to write one?
I was going to let you be the judge, and then you were going to have to tell them who sucked and who didn't suck.
Oh, my goodness. It might end up just being the first one that we see.
Did you see William Bernhardt said bald people are evil? And then I said Captain Picard is not evil. I am not evil. and
also, it's people my age, they full on shave their heads now. They don't go halfway. It is full on.
And then he said that I was evil.
Oh my goodness.
And then I said, oh, thank you, because I always say that Emily's good cop and I'm bad cop. So there you go. No. You gave me my street cred. A child who is pretending to be a big dog. Top of that one, Betsey and David.
So that's a protagonist and kind of a goal, yeah? Like the goal is...
We're going to have to give them a more tangible cinematic goal, but... All right, come on.
Deadline.
Emily's baby.
You got a deadline.
Emily's baby's going to pop out by the time you guys put in a protagonist.
10 seconds.
Perfectionists in our midst. Betsey's person can be our protagonist.
Oh.
As a child, I saw Bigfoot, but don't remember seeing Bigfoot.
That's a good one.
Oh.
In both cases, we have child.
But Betsey has a new one. Rowan was meal prepping, but the Loch Ness Monster came over for dinner and ate all the food.
Okay. So, and I'm gonna call David out. He just borrowed somebody else's. He looked at,
but hey, no, you said it had to be something from our conversation.
True. I was gonna say he looked over at the desk. He looked at the desk next to him. But you're right.
I did that too.
I didn't say it had to be his from the camera. All right. So combine all three of those into one protagonist. Ha.
So a child is meal prepping. The Loch Ness Monster and Bigfoot show up for dinner, eat all the food.
Slow. I'm just saying, turn them into one protagonist right now. I'm not
That's
saying.
what I'm saying. I'm combining
Okay.
theirs.
All right.
Okay, that is a story though. So we need to just. It's a child for sure. We have backstory for the child, but like, what's a way that we can just describe the child? Are we trying to describe what their goal is, John Myers, or just
right now? I want to know who the protagonist is. That's all I want to know.
Rowan, a child dressed like a dog,
and the other Loch Ness Monster stuff is backstory, right?
I guess.
And then what's the part from David's? David is what? What did David say? What did David borrow from Betsey? I don't remember now. It's
just the
scrolled up.
Bigfoot.
The Bigfoot thing. So Miley just said a child who is pretending to be a dog and is searching for the Loch Ness Monster. So that could give us a goal.
I didn't say do the goal yet.
Yeah, we keep getting goals and obstacles.
Right. So Rowan dressed like a dog, and the other two things saw Bigfoot and is cooking dinner. Those are backstory, right?
Yeah, but I think we can go ahead and just tag on that goal. I think it's a good
right.
one.
Next,
that we created.
One step at a time. Calm down, y'all. Goal. Come on.
Betsey says Bigfoot is the obstacle.
So the goal, John Myers, the goal is searching for the Loch Ness Monster.
Okay, so the goal is what?
For searching for the Loch Ness Monster.
Okay. Searching is not a goal. I'm teaching here now. So what's the goal?
It's a good question.
Capturing could be the goal. Publicizing him on national television could be the goal. Photographing could be the goal. A search is not a goal.
Betsey, are you implying that he's meal prepping using the Loch Ness Monster, or?
Betsey said the goal is meal prepping. For those of you not reading the chat. Oh my.
So it's a dinner comprised of the Loch Ness Monster, where Rowan is cooking the Loch Ness Monster. All right, the goal is meal prepping. I'm going with that. You got a better one? Capturing the monster. Oh my god. All right. So the goal is capture the monster for dinner. There you go. Are we good with that? That's okay. That's a visceral cinematic goal.
Yes.
Not searching. All right, so capturing which monster? Bigfoot or Loch Ness Monster?
The Loch Ness Monster.
Capturing Loch Ness Monster to serve him for dinner. Obstacles, they have to be related. They can't be graduate from high school, give someone food poisoning, and buy a car. They have to be related thematically.
I would add too that the goal is kind of internal reasoning. Like, why does he want to turn the Loch Ness Monster into dinner? Maybe because he hates the Loch Ness Monster and his family's obsession with it. Like, you know, there's often some kind of internal reason.
I agree. From his current status quo world, there needs to be something in his upbringing that
his parents love the Loch Ness Monster more than him.
Oh, there you go.
So he wants to.
That works.
What? What kind of podcast is this?
But you don't have to kill the poor thing. I love the Loch Ness Monster.
I know. How did this happen?
All right. So what? He's overcompensating for his parents' love of the Loch Ness Monster.
Yeah.
Is that what you're saying?
Yeah.
Oh my gosh. Where's Dr. Nick when you need him?
But then the character grows and learns that he can't eat the poor monster. He loves it.
Yeah, I hope so.
I hope not. All right, what are the obstacles?
Betsey says...
Bigfoot.
Yeah.
Yeah, that's what Betsey said.
Bigfoot.
She also said he likes sushi. Could be another just reason why he's searching. He's a gourmet. He wants to be a gourmet chef and have the most unique ingredients in the world.
Bigfoot knows that Nessie is also an endangered species, so Bigfoot tries to protect Nessie.
Yeah.
By eating him?
No.
I think that's a good one.
Keeping the child from eating Nessie.
Yeah.
Oh, Bigfoot is a nature lover.
Yeah. I think
as we all should be.
That also fits Bigfoot. Like, that fits
that's what I think of Bigfoot. When I think of Bigfoot, I think he believes in preservation, nature preservation.
Yeah.
He never tramples over berries or weeds or anything. He walks gingerly around the wild strawberries. All right, Bigfoot is a nature preservationist.
I also really like this from Betsey. He has to believe in himself before he can believe in Nessie. So, like, an obstacle could be like a lack in his belief in himself, but it has to come out in some physical way.
Rowan's obstacle.
Rowan. Yeah, like an internal obstacle is his belief in himself.
My shorthand.
Yeah,
this would be so much better if it was on my giant whiteboard like I did at the master class.
Yeah.
Where the whole room couldn't read it, as opposed to just me not being able to read it. All right, one more obstacle.
The story's way more.
Unfortunately, there are monster hunters coming after both Bigfoot and Nessie.
Oh. What are they? What are the monster hunters? The parents.
Betsey.
Betsey and Miley are the monster hunters. All right. All right. Betsey is the monster. Betsey and Emma or Miley are the monster hunters. All right. So y'all are going to come up with the ending together. So, overcompensating for his parents' true love of the Loch Ness Monster, Rowan, dressed as a dog, captures the Loch Ness Monster, Nessie, to serve her as dinner to somebody. I don't know who. Despite the obstacles of Bigfoot is a nature preservationist who is trying to protect the endangered species of the Loch Ness Monster. Despite the obstacle of sushi loving. What?
No, that was just part of his motivation.
Oh, okay.
That was part of the goal.
Low self-confidence, and they also have to avoid Miley and Betsey, the monster hunters.
But
ticking time clock.
There is a question of, does he succeed?
Yeah, and by a ticking time clock.
I wanted him to realize with the presence of the monster hunters that maybe he doesn't want Loch Ness Monster to die, and he teams up with Bigfoot to save them from the monster hunters.
I like that there's people flipping through their YouTube right now and coming into the middle of this, and they're like, what the heck kind of show is this? Why weren't we here 20 minutes ago for this? Because I picture people on YouTube turning the channel, this click, 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 turning a old-fashioned channel. All right, so
do you think so when we talk about story and we're talking about protagonist, goal, obstacle, does the protagonist have to achieve their goal, or can they change their goal?
No, they can fail at their goal.
Yeah.
As long as the ending is emotionally satisfying.
Yeah.
They can fail. They can die.
Because Betsey and Miley agree with me that they should save Nessie. So.
And me.
Yay.
And David.
I love Nessie. I saw Nessie.
Yes.
Okay. What before when? Before the what? Hibernation? What? We need something before something happens.
Before the monster people get him. Is that too vague? The monster hunters.
We already know they get to him and save him.
No, Rowan saves them from the monster hunters before the monster hunters. Is that too vague though? Do we need another time thing?
It's your all story, man. I'm just a receptionist.
These monster hunters are the bad people.
Before his parents get home.
Except one who turns on the rest.
What? So he initially started as he was going to serve Nessie as sushi, serve Nessie as a meal to somebody, and then now he's saving her?
Yeah, that's what we were saying.
For later, for leftovers.
No, he has a change of heart.
He wants to eat her tomorrow.
Oh.
All right. There you go.
Dinner is the timeline. Or is the time bomb.
By 7:00 when it's time for dinner.
So,
you guys are a bunch of do-gooders trying to save them. Save everybody by the end. Does no one perish in this story?
Maybe one of the monster hunters.
Oh.
No, Bigfoot gives his life to save Nessie.
Oh.
Oh.
I love it.
I think that's in this book. Told the baby that Bigfoot died.
Bye.
All right, good job, I think. I don't know.
Yeah, I mean, we could keep going, but I think our deadline is met. And so it's done. Our story is done.
I am washing my hands of this. Whoever wants to steal this brilliant story and turn it into a book, it's all yours.
We're not copywriting this one.
It's all yours. It's out in the wild. It's public domain.
Yep.
You don't have to wait 100 years for this one. It's all yours. Guess what?
We
Couldn't have done without y'all.
without you.